Democrats want to increase scrutiny of privately run immigration detention. Democrats poised to hold committee positions in Congress that will give them jurisdiction over agencies in charge of keeping immigrants in custody, especially children, said Thursday they plan to step up scrutiny of immigration detention next year. Democrats won control of the House in November's elections, which means the party's House members shift into chairmanships of committees and subcommittees in the next Congress that starts in January. "There's a lot of work to be done," said Rep. a California Democrat who is likely to chair the House Appropriations Committee's Subcommittee on Homeland Security. Roybal Allard is now the subcommittee's ranking member, the spot reserved for the most senior member of the minority party. On her list of things to get done are providing better access to legal counsel, using alternatives to detention particularly for families, ensuring that immigration facilities are more regularly inspected and more funding for the hiring of social workers to work with unaccompanied child migrants, she said. Mainly it's going to be oversight, pushing for fairness and justice for these immigrants, Roybal Allard said. Although illegal immigration has dropped significantly in recent years, the Trump administration has stepped up immigration detention, including holding parents and children from Central America who have been more likely to cross the border and surrender to law enforcement authorities and request asylum. Rep. of Connecticut is likely to become the chair of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, Health and Human Services and Education. She is the ranking Democrat on that subcommittee right now. She pledged to get accountability for the taxpayers' dollars being spent to hold immigrant children in tents in Tornillo, Texas. She criticized a White House request for another $190 million for the Unaccompanied Children program to be added to the spending bill that Congress is negotiating, which she said would prolong the detention of immigrant children that is already averaging about 70 days. "I will do everything I can to prevent them from getting one more nickel," DeLauro said. Congress is trying to finish up the spending package this year and there is debate over how much will be spent on immigration enforcement, including immigration detention and the border President Donald Trump said promised to build at Mexico's expense. Immigration groups and other advocates are pressuring Democrats to prevent increases in spending on immigration enforcement and any additional spending on the wall. The American Immigration Council, a legal group that advocates for immigrants, released a study this week that reported nearly two-thirds of people held in immigration detention in recent years were locked away in privately operated jails in remote areas far from their communities and legal support. The analysis was based on records for the 355,729 people held in Immigration and Customs Enforcement custody in 2015. According to the Council's report, the federal government also regularly moved people from between its 638 facilities in its network. The report titled was released on Wednesday, intended to have some impact on the negotiations on Capitol Hill. As Congress weighs the administration's repeated requests for a massive immigration enforcement budget, these findings should be central to policy discussions about detention funding, oversight, and reform, said Catherine Shepard, National Advocacy Council. According to the American Immigration Council's analysis, 67% of the 355,729 detained in 2015 were held in privately owned facilities and 64% were in remote facilities. The average detention length among the more than 260,000 adults released from immigration detention centers in 2015 was 38 days. The study shows that the majority of adults who were detained were transferred at least once during their detention, which led to confinement in multiple locations. The report's researchers found that 48% of detainees were confined at least once in a facility that was located more than 60 miles away from the nearest non-profit immigration defense attorney that specialized in defending immigrants threatened with removal. In addition, 26% was held at a facility 90 miles away and 22% was 120 miles from that legal help, according to the report by Dr. Emily Rio, an associate professor at University of Southern California Gould School of Law, and Ian Peacock, a University of California, Los Angeles sociology graduate student. "Providing access to legal counsel is going to be one of my priorities," Roybal Allard said. "We're going to do everything we can to make sure easy access is available and they will be able to get legal counsel. Immigrants held in detention do not have a right to an attorney under U.S. law." In a report released in May, reported that three-quarters of people in immigration detention in 2016 were held in facilities operated by private companies. According to the Institute, the Department of Homeland Security spent $126 per day for each detained person in the fiscal year 2017 and costs soared to $2 billion annually. That has also led to increased profits for the private companies that run the facilities. The American Immigration Council analysis showed that privately owned facilities outside of major urban areas had higher numbers of grievances. In 2015, Nearly 50,000 detention-related grievances from detainees and the public were made through ICE's Detention Reporting and Information Line, a phone complaint and question line, the report said. Access to legal counsel and basic immigration case information were the most common type of grievances. The use of immigration detention in the United States has increased significantly in recent decades, while allegations of civil and human rights violations in detention facilities have persisted, said Rio. The issues raised in the report could be exacerbated if the government expands detention use further, she said. Author and Stanford history professor Anna Raquel Minion wrote recently in an opinion article published by the New York Times that in the country, the shift away to greater detention of immigrants after a fall-off in the 1950s came with the arrival of Cubans and Haitians in the 1980s and later, influence from for-profit companies' drive that helped build a massive detention infrastructure, Minion wrote. Roybal Allard, DeLauro, and Rep. Elect. Democrat Texas, said in the conference call Thursday they would also push increased training of detention guards and personnel. Most of these contract facilities are run by folks who are used to dealing with hardened criminals and have no sensitivity or understanding with regards to the fact that they are dealing with a different population, Roybal Allard said. Escobar called for more accountability and transparency in the contracts that are awarded to private companies. What we've seen with these huge no-bid contracts is they're ongoing, Escobar said. They keep getting renewed and the amount of money and taxpayer dollars going to this is probably significantly more than we even know. Suzanne Gamboa is a national reporter for NBC Latino and MPNews.com. Gwen Avales is a desk assistant at MPNews.com where she writes, researches and helps produce content.